Greetings. This is Erick Widman from Passage Immigration Law, and I am hopeful this is working out well. It is our first official live Q&A, and we've got some great questions submitted ahead of time, and the sun is shining directly on me, so I had to close the blinds, but hopefully the background is looking fine. And our law firm, we're based in Portland, Oregon. That's where our headquarters are. And we're excited to expand into Seattle and down into Los Angeles, California, which is where I went to college. I went to UCLA and graduated way back in 1995. So it'll be a homecoming of sorts to get our LA office up and running. Our employee, Allison Dorian, is already down there. So for this session, a number of you have already submitted questions. I'm going to be going through those one by one. I'm going to encourage you to write questions in the chat as you would like. Anything that you would like to get answered, I'll do my best with the time frame that we have. We're going to go for a half hour. So first question we're going to look at, a couple questions came in. How can I petition for my parents? If you're a U.S. citizen and you're hoping that your parents will become green card holders, what is the best way to do that in one circumstance where they're living outside the United States and another situation where they're living in the U.S.? So keep in mind that you have to be a U.S. citizen to petition for your parents. So if you only have a green card at this point, you've got to naturalize, become a U.S. citizen, and then you can petition for your parents. They would be considered immediate relatives, and you are also in some situations able to petition for your step-parents. There are some rules to that, but we're going to assume you're a U.S. citizen right now, and let's take the situation where your parent lives outside the United States. And so, for example, your parent might be in Australia. So the first step is that you have to file an I-130 petition for your parent and provide enough evidence to document the real relationship. So it's not like documenting a genuine marriage. You don't have to prove that you and your parents really get along well and have a genuine life together. You just got to show that the person truly is your parent through a birth certificate, sometimes a DNA test, but you provide that supporting evidence in Form I-130 along with your filing fee. You can file that online or with a paper filing. And right now it's taking about 6 months for the petition to get approved. Sometimes it's longer than that, 6 to 9 months. Depends which service center you have your petition sent to. So some are operating faster, some are slower, and you can't control that except based upon where you live. So there's an element of luck into how quickly your I-130 gets approved. Sometimes the service centers switch the I-130 petitions from one location to the other to balance their workload. And in general, USCIS is very backed up right now. There's a lot of mismanagement going on too, and there's some good lawsuits that attorneys are filing to speed things up. So your petition for your Australian parent will take maybe 6 to 9 months to get approved. Then the second stage of the process continues with consular processing. And that stage is with the National Visa Center, which is part of the Department of State. And you will then have to submit paperwork like an affidavit of support, submit a visa application. You can help your parent with that. They ultimately, mom or dad will submit that and become documentarily qualified. You'll get an interview set up, probably in Sydney, and you'll have to attend that interview and answer all the consular officer's questions about why you have a genuine relationship. And why you truly can prove that you are father or mother and child. After that, your parent will arrive in the U.S. maybe 14 months on average, just over a year from the time you petition for your parent. That's on average. And as soon as he or she arrives in the US, their passport is stamped, the admission stamp indicates that they're immediately a permanent resident, but their actual green card will be mailed to them at the address you listed, ideally within a month. So that is a quick overview of the two major steps for your parent when you petition for your parent who's abroad. If your parent's already in the United States, you can do an adjustment of status if you're a US citizen. Keep in mind that your parent must not have had immigrant intent. You could not pre-plan an adjustment of status in any category. You would provide a lot of the same documentation, and you would simultaneously concurrently file the I-130 plus a Form 485 along with the affidavit of support. So instead of one drawn out initial step and then a second step for consular processing, it's one big step for an adjustment of status. That's why it's often known as the one-step adjustment of status. That's taking roughly about a year here on the West Coast. And you can end up in the same happy situation with a green card for your parent. I'm not going to break down all the steps given all the questions that we have. But those are the two ways to petition for your parent and get your parent a green card. Okay, so thank you for submitting questions here. And I'm not as smooth as I want to be. As I get more practice, I'll get better at this. Okay, let me just go with this. How long after you get your green card can you naturalize? Great. You guys are helping me warm up here. Good question. So you can naturalize. The default is 5 years after you become a permanent resident, unless you're married to a US citizen. And in that case, you can naturalize in 3 years because they allow you to do it faster. But the starting point is when you receive your green card. Okay. Question. I would like to know how to approach becoming a US citizen when I'm in the medical marijuana industry. I meet and have passed all the other requirements that have been here in the US from Mexico. So also a great question. This is tricky because the federal government currently says marijuana is illegal. And so it's a classic federalism battle. The states, in many states, are legalizing marijuana. It's illegal at the federal level, but guess who controls the US immigration system? It's the federal government. So they're currently saying that if you use marijuana or involved in the marijuana industry, you are effectively inadmissible in most cases. There can be some exceptions, there can be some nuances to that, but in general, if you're in the industry, you can end up being inadmissible. You notice the medical marijuana industry, but the federal government's still saying that's illegal. So I'll leave it at that, and I'm going to try to get my rhythm here. We got 20 minutes left. We'll keep moving. Then I'm on a B1, B2 visa. My husband applied for an I-130 in March 2020. He's a green card holder. He's applied for citizenship. My case has not been approved from USCIS yet. What can I do to expedite? So because your husband, as you know, is a green card holder, you have to look at the visa bulletin. And right now, your petition, the category F2A is current. So that's good. But you have to make sure that you maintain your underlying status and you are on a visitor visa. So that your husband applied for you back in March 2020. He's also applied for citizenship. So you have to make sure that you keep your underlying status. So you might have to extend your B1, B2, but you're wondering how can you expedite it? You can definitely request an expedite. Most of those expedite requests get denied. We and others who try this a lot, good law firms, we can get a number of these approved, but it's not easy for anybody. And you have to show a compelling reason why your case should be put in front of others, because USCIS views that can be effectively cutting in line in some situations. They'd be looking at it from that point of view. So you'd have to call them up. You can do the expedite request over the phone, or you could even in some situations, in theory, do it over the Emma chatbot. But we recommend the most effective way is over the phone and explain why there is a compelling medical reason or a situation where there's dire financial repercussions if you don't get this green card approved. And we, for example, were able to show that a foreign national had a job offer in an important industry and get the green card and approved and expedited for a particular case. So it can happen. Can happen. Okay. So, question about, I'm pulling this up here. Okay, with DACA, a couple questions about DACA. You are able right now to renew your DACA, but not first-time applicants are it's not possible to proceed for first-time applicants. It's on hold effectively. And there's a lot of litigation with this. And we thought the Biden administration was going to be more friendly and that they would get a solution passed faster. Right now, as of a couple hours ago, the parliamentarian has not given a decision on whether she's going to allow a number of immigration provisions to go through the Build Back Better law. And the hope for all of us who want to see dreamers and others benefit finally is that those provisions will get approved and immigration reform to a degree will happen through the Build Back Better bill. The Senate parliamentarian has a huge amount of power to determine if that, I believe it's called the budget reconciliation process, if those immigration provisions can be included without needing Republicans to also vote in favor. So a simple majority could make it happen. So yeah, carefully watch the news because dreamers and DACA holders will also be impacted by that. Okay, a couple other questions. And okay, I'm reading here. I'll just read this. My petitioner's half American, half German. He got a job offer from the U.S. and is now in the U.S. of A. He never filed U.S. taxes before, as he did not know that he needed to in good faith. Now we filed his taxes through a streamlined filing, but it'll take a while to get a transcript. Plus, he doesn't have a W-2 yet. And what do we submit in the packet 3 to prove his financial capacity? We also filed through direct consular filing as he falls under this exceptional circumstance. What can be a replacement for the W-2? Okay, so you're going through consular processing to get, I think it's an immigrant visa, or maybe you're going for a non-immigrant visa, but you got a job offer from the U.S. and you're needing to provide evidence through the consulate. Probably if you're at the NVC, the National Visa Center. Let's see if I can answer this specific question. What do you need to prove to show financial capacity? And since, okay, yeah, the petitioner here, the American petitioner, assume a U.S. citizen, to show that he can support you. The affidavit of support, of course, is required, and the supporting evidence for that includes 3 years of tax returns, or if he's never filed taxes, an explanation for why he has not filed taxes. And this explanation will be scrutinized. You can get on a payment plan. Well, some people, for example, have never owed taxes, and that happens. But you have to show that you are on a payment plan with the IRS if you do, in fact, owe taxes. The other thing to seriously consider is getting a joint sponsor. And a joint sponsor, the petitioner has to file the 864 affidavit of support, but you can actually have 2 additional joint sponsors to help fill in the gaps where there might not be sufficient financial proof to get through consular processing. So a joint sponsor would show that he or she's filed tax returns. The joint sponsor would provide evidence of current employment or assets, ongoing stream of income. And yeah, just looking at your question again, you're wondering something besides a replacement of the W-2. That's typically best. An employer letter will, if he or she started a job, for example, an employer letter can also show that you do have a job along with pay stubs. Okay, someone asked, can we go to Canada? Canada is a pretty welcoming place. They are rolling out a red carpet way better than the US, and US companies are really hurting for it. A lot of big corporations are setting up operations at the border so that people can immigrate to Canada and then commute into the US periodically. I think Microsoft has something like that right there at the border. Okay, more questions. And okay, I'm going to jump right over here to question about filing for a passport and getting your passport submitted quickly. Okay, so how do you get a passport quickly? There is something called a passport agency. And then if you're not in a rush and you have a certificate of naturalization, you can go to a local passport processor, I believe they're called, in your community in the US, and provide proof that you are now a US citizen, provide the supporting documents for you and your family as needed, and then they'll mail it in for you, and it can take maybe 6 to 8 weeks, 1.5 to 2 months to get that back. You could also have that expedited as needed. You pay, I think, an extra $100 to get it expedited. That, if you don't have a 1.5 to 2 months, however, you can go to what I refer to as the passport agency, and the closest one here in the Pacific Northwest is in Seattle. So under COVID, you still need to go to their website and make an appointment or call them up, but you could set up an appointment and have your passport expedited the same day or the next day. So super fast. If you need to travel and there's a big emergency, you certainly should consider setting up an appointment for that. And recently, someone was also asking, do you need a passport in order to travel internationally? In general, of course, yes, you do want to have your passport in hand before you leave the US. But if you lose your passport or you never got your passport, a US consulate abroad can release and create a passport for you. They can generate one for you. You set up an appointment, you go to a consulate, and you create a ticket there. You get in line, and they can produce a passport for you through American Citizen Services. And in fact, I lost my passport in Budapest, Hungary. I was pickpocketed on the bus. I was traveling from Budapest over to, I went to Austria. On the way back, it was pretty foolish. I was getting cocky, and I had my passport hanging over my neck in kind of a folder. And it was gone by these professionals. They clipped that neck holder, like a necklace that I was using to carry my passport, and they stole it. So put it, that wasn't very smart. Put it somewhere else, not just have it in your front pocket or back pocket, especially, or hanging around your neck. So passport options are there, either a passport agency, or you can go and get a passport replaced as I did in Budapest, Hungary, or the closest consulate. Okay, looking at more questions. Do you think it's a good idea to apply for a work visa before applying to become a resident? I want to be able to work while this process is taking place. So I'm not sure if you're in the US already or not. But let's say you are in the US. As long as you're maintaining status one way or the other, and you, for example, are a student or a visitor, and you have a job offer, absolutely, you could and should get a work visa if possible. If you're outside the US and maybe you're wondering, is it a good idea to apply for a work visa before applying to become a resident? If you're outside the US, a practical issue is, well, do you want to live here long term? Because that's what happens when you become a permanent resident. You're moving your life over here. You have to spend the majority of your time in the United States. And the US, it's not for everybody. So it could be a good way for you to earn some money, see if you like it, and then proceed after that to become a permanent resident. Okay, question. Is there a limit to the number of passports one may be allowed to hold if each country allows multinationality? The maximum I've heard of, and here, check out this view. I think the sun's better. Okay, not as bad. All right. So yeah, that is Portland. I think it's not shining directly. So if the maximum that I've heard of and seen is 3 different passports, 3 different nationalities. And so dual citizenship's always fine if it's okay with the 2 countries in question. 3 triple citizenship, that's also fine. Like I believe, for example, US, Canadian, and British client, that was someone who had all 3. I don't believe I've met someone with 4, but as long as each country allows it or tolerates it, and the US is not a huge fan, they basically, if you become a US citizen, you naturalize, you have to swear that your primary allegiance is to the US, not to your home country. But they don't make you give up your passport like Japan does, or India, for example. Okay, another question just came in. I auto-deported myself. Is there a way to fix it? So I suspect you might have accidentally crossed the border, and we've had that happen to people who have contacted our office. They didn't realize that they went into Mexico, for example. Is there a way to fix it? It depends on whether you were inadmissible before, if there are any reasons why you would be not allowed back in by a CBP officer. So yes, sometimes it's possible through a waiver, through a new petition, or maybe you're a US citizen and you hadn't demonstrated to the US government that you qualify as a US citizen already. So we love it when we realize, hey, you're already a US citizen, and let's just do an N600 to show why you should get a passport. Okay. And question about the current state of H-1B filings with USCIS. Has anything changed with the Biden administration coming into power? Well, one of the few good things the Trump administration did was this H-1B requirement. They switched the registration requirement and allowed for people to apply for H-1Bs and see if they're selected in the lottery initially before spending all the time and money doing the full application. And so if you weren't selected in the lottery, it's a big waste of time and money. The registration process allows people to put their hat in the ring to see if they're selected for the lottery. And then only after that, they get the green light to file for the rest of the process to complete the application. Biden has kept that system in place, which is good. There's not been an increase in the number of available visas, for example. There have been a few successful lawsuits recently for benefiting H-4 family members. And the honeymoon period with the Biden administration is really over. More and more litigation is happening, and they deserve it with the way they've been instituting and reinforcing other unfair Trump policies, like making people apply for asylum and remain in Mexico. Our law firm has filed 2 mandamus lawsuits just last month on behalf of clients who have delayed cases. And so we're thankful that that's a tool that's available. And I think more and more immigration attorneys should do that, because simply asking USCIS to expedite the case or kind of pleading and begging for them to take action isn't always that fruitful, both in the family context and in the business context. So lawsuits often work, and it's important to take the fight to the government. Ooh, got a good political question just came in. We keep hearing that Manchin is the only one left who hasn't signed on to the bill. Has Kirsten Sinema signed on? Well, Manchin, I don't know the politics well enough. You might know better than I about the details of which senators, who's involved, which congressional leaders are in support. And I understand Manchin, he is a Democrat or kind of a centrist, maybe independent. They're always trying to persuade him, right? So I was a political science major, but I haven't been keeping up on everything. So we are near the end of our time here. I'd love it if you could give us some feedback on ways we could improve, what we could do differently, and how to solicit questions. I did a video on this recently, and I'll end with this kind of a practical pointer that I'd like to give clients and potential clients, is that when you deal with USCIS, there's a way you want to approach them with confidence, but you don't want to annoy them. And using some good old-fashioned common sense and a little bit of legal jargon can help with the way you communicate with them. And so the very simple thing, some of you might find this obvious, others might find it kind of revolutionary. We recommend you use the phrase, you respectfully request that USCIS does A, B, and C. You're not begging, or you're not wondering if they could do this, but you're not demanding it either, because they get to use their discretion in many cases. So these benefits are available to you, and we're paying the government. All these filing fees that you're paying funds the government, all those employees. So we're respectful towards them. We respect the difficult job that they have, but we're paying them to do this work, and they need to do it in an efficient, expeditious way. And a go-to phrase when you write them a letter to follow up, or you need them to do something, or even when you're on the phone and you're annoyed, you could respectfully request to speak to a supervisor. You don't have to keep repeating it, but drop it in there at least once in your letter or your email or in your phone call. And we found it to be effective. Also, at the USCIS interview or on the phone, refer to the person you're speaking with as officer. It's a term of respect. They also like that. And it can get results when you're just feeling like you're up against a brick wall. Okay, then, great doing this first session. We're going to keep doing them weekly, and look forward to staying in touch. Feel free to reach out with comments, questions, and we want to be useful for the long term. All right, take care, everybody. I'll end this now. Bye-bye.